yeah, but then Dylan, if you don't mind, if you'll do the first talk for us, just so everyone knows what to expect. I asked Dylan and Stephan to each give us about 20 minutes of what they're up to, and then that gives us some time for questions afterwards, and then we should wrap up around 8 o'clock or so. If we run over a little and you need to go, please don't stress about it. Yeah, so Dylan works at Zappi. I spoke with them a couple of weeks ago. He's very close to me here in Cape Town, but he's part of a team that's distributed all over the place. And I was speaking about Ben Mari a bit earlier, because Ben actually was the very first person to speak at a ElixirZA meetup. And he spoke about how they used Elixir at Zappi at that time. So this is a few years ago, and it was like very small and very new in the company. And things have changed since then. So I think Dylan can give us a bit more context on the company as a whole and kind of where Elixir fits in and how they've been using it lately. So yeah, without further ado, Dylan, please take it away.
Cool. Can I share things? I haven't really used Google Meets before.
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah, also, if you don't mind, guys, I'm sure Dylan doesn't mind if we interrupt him if there is a question or a comment or something. Just go for it. That's the beauty of having a meetup where you can actually speak to.
Yeah. Do you guys normally do like slides and things, or is it more just a...
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then.
But no pressure. We're happy to stare at your beautiful face.
I do have some slides. I'm just trying to grab the right one because I've got so many just tabs open. I think it is.
You should just take your time. I'm still making my slides.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we can see that. Practical benefits of Elixir.
Do
you want to hit present?
Yeah. How do I do that? Will that do it? Sorry about this.
Google Slides.
Let me. I think I was selecting a window, but I want to select a Chrome tab.
Cool.
Sorry about this, guys. I haven't used
yeah, that's right.
before at all.
It's mostly Zoom at work. That's happy.
Yep.
Someone really needs to write a meeting app in Elixir. Eh?
Yeah.
They did. They had that Elixir Streams week a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Where they were streaming over an Elixir app built in Broadway, I think it is.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of the talks was about how they built, the package used for building it. It was quite interesting. The very first talk was a little bit buggy, but then they figured it out, and it was quite good for the rest of the week. Cool. Yeah, that looks great.
That is kind of working, but I can't actually change slides. I have to go to it, which is odd.
That sounds weird.
Yes. I think it might be because it's like in a different
That was working now.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, otherwise you could flip through here. That's not a crisis either.
No, I'll actually just talk, if that's okay.
Okay.
I don't need the slides in particular. Right. Cool. So what this talk is kind of about, and I might be preaching to the choir a little bit here, given who you are, but you know, over the past couple of years, which is when I switched to Elixir, I've also been trying to evangelize Elixir within my company. And that can be pretty hard sometimes. So I'll touch a little bit on what we're doing. But really, I think what I've learned actually just recently is how to phrase things in a way and really surface like benefits of Elixir on a day-to-day basis, not just these theoretical, you know, based on some abstract concepts. For you guys, how this might help, I'm not really sure. I was hoping to share this video with people at Zappi, so I can try to convince a few more. But I think it's helpful for maybe communicating to others, convincing others to go with Elixir over whatever other things, since it is still a it's not a super well used language out there, and I think it should be. And part of getting people on board is just actually convincing them. Well, the main part. So yeah, whatever you take away from it, I hope you guys enjoy. So yeah, about Zappi, we're a market research platform and allow customers to test ads, test concepts, test packages, test anything that you want to advertise about. We test it on our platform. They upload some kind of content, maybe it's a video, create a questionnaire, and then we automate all the data sampling, the data collection, the storage, the data modeling, all of that pipelining stuff. And at the end, you get some nice analytics and hopefully predictive measures about how your ad's going to perform in market. And we have historically been a Rails house, a little bit of Python, for data science, some Go in SRE, all the good stuff. And kind of initially, the idea behind Zappi as a company was that it would be an engine that different companies could then build their own market research apps on top of, using like a custom Ruby DSL. That was one of the reasons Ruby was chosen, so that you could make your own little scripting language. That evolved to have Zappi, own everything and be more of an app store. So we built an interface to create market research products, a user interface, and it allows us to rapidly create new methodologies, research methodologies, and tailor them to users' needs. So the idea was to just have this app store where you could pick an app to test anything that you could think of. Then over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, with the rise of big data, BI, AI as well, we've been pivoting towards more of a real research data platform. So in the future, we want to go beyond just market research, but being able to capture all your data in a single place, be able to slice and dice however you want, really just be a connected data platform, and then be able to draw insights, draw analytics out of that completely automatically. That is the goal now. But what that means is, over the last few years, our business model has changed significantly, and our core data model of our system, especially our analytics system, just didn't keep up. So we've had this, like about 3 Rails monoliths with a bunch of services off to the side, evolving in a way that didn't quite suit our business requirements. We were stuck in this world of analyzing just a single survey, which is very, very different from analyzing not just your own survey, but every survey that has been run in our system. Slice, dice your respondents however you want. So we're talking, tens of millions of respondents, of rows, highly dimensional data. Like in some cases, tens of millions of rows, thousands of columns, and you want to be filter on each of those columns and each of those rows with particular values, and you want to do that fast. And then you have the whole AI stuff like verbatim analysis, especially free text analysis, which wasn't really doable easily before the current age of LLMs. And all these new requirements just meant that our old analysis system was not fit for purpose anymore. So we decided to rebuild it from the ground up. We spun off 2 teams. My team focused much more on the insights side of things. So my team's assumption is that some data can be calculated, computed, and we turn that into something that end users can actually consume and understand without themselves being a data expert. The other team is working on basically a new database using ClickHouse for providing that speed at scale.
Cool. Sorry, Dylan, to interrupt you, but if you're saying like tens of millions of rows and like thousands of columns sometimes, is that in a big Postgres database, or is that something different?
It's ClickHouse now.
Okay.
So previously, you know, that was in it. We weren't doing that before because we couldn't. So we had to like pre-aggregate data in Postgres or MySQL, and use pre-aggregated stuff. But if you are pre-aggregating, you lose granularity and you can't perform certain analyses. So like, you know, if you find an average score for a study, then you aggregate that in advance, you can't then say, okay, but like, what was the score amongst millennials?
Okay.
Yeah, so moving towards ClickHouse provides us with that, the ability to just make these massive queries at speed.
Cool.
Yeah. So business model changing, requirements changing. That meant we wanted to build a new thing, and we chose Elixir. Like I mentioned before, we were thinking about Django, but went with Elixir because Ben had some experience, so he could help guide us. He wasn't on our team, but he could help guide us. But also our CTO, Brendan, is just a massive fan, and he has been for a long time since Elixir. And again, when we started, you know, it was like, I think 1.5 or 1.6 was coming out. There were some live view, what was it? 0.7, but the live view that was actually good came out, and things were just looking really hot in the Elixir world. So we jumped on that train.
I mean, the first live view that was good, because it's still good. Like,
yes. You know, the first when they moved away from the old templating engine to the current one.
The new Heeks templates. Okay.
Yes,
cool.
Yes. So when I still had to, you know, justify it, and I still do have to justify it when convincing other teams to give it a try. And I couldn't speak from experience, so all my justification came from reading, and a lot of the, you know, benefits often, I don't know, in reading that they felt a bit abstract, they felt a bit theoretical. You know, there's the functional, it's a functional language and it's based on maths, and there's data immutability, and there's this concurrency model, and it's fault tolerant, all of this stuff. Like, it sounded good in theory, but I couldn't picture my day-to-day changing because of that. Especially because, you know, when you speak about these things, oftentimes you hear, well, Ruby can do that too, or, you know, Python can do that too, or whatever can do that too. And it's true, you have Shopify, you have GitHub, who are massively scaled Rails apps. You know, there's improvements to Ruby. They had the JIT compiler, like, you know, the guys at Shopify are doing some incredible work to improve Ruby performance. That's going on. There's improvements to Rails continuously. They've got like new async capabilities, friendlier deployments, getting really interesting with some front-end technologies, just lacking a little bit behind Live View and Tailwind, but, you know, they're getting there. The point is, oftentimes you say, oh, Elixir can do this thing, and the answer is, well, we do that already in Ruby. Ruby can scale. But yeah, after the last 2 years, I think I've got a much better justification to say why Elixir is the way to go, even though these other languages and frameworks can do the thing. So the first, the functional programming aspect. honestly, the biggest thing to me day to day is it means maintenance and refactoring is just, it's a dream. It's like, it's so easy to make these large sweeping changes across your entire code base. And I think a lot of it boils down to the fact that it's functional language, not all of it. But the immutability factor makes things predictable and testable. It means you can actually just rely on your tests because you're not accidentally mutating any state anywhere. Like the fact that everything is a function or it's data, and there's very clear separation between those things makes the code and especially data modeling of advanced concepts to me a lot simpler. And I never really found that simplicity with Ruby. It was, it can be easy to feel smart in Ruby because you did something very complicated, which maybe shouldn't have been so complicated. And then there's structs and type specs and, giving you in editor errors. And again, like I know that many languages, there's type spec, there's actually true typed languages that give you that functionality, but none of them do that with Elixir's syntax. And one of my pet peeves in languages is braces for control flow. Something about Ruby, the one thing they do right is using like do end and just and avoiding braces for control flow, keeping them for data. That's what I really love about Ruby syntax. It's a nitpick, but it's an opinion. So there we go. And I'm glad Elixir carried that over. And because of all this, I find that like the code gen tools, people slam them, but when you're doing repetitive, just copy pasting of very, very similar things, the code gen stuff becomes so much better in Elixir than Ruby, in my experience. I really haven't had good experiences with Ruby and Copilot, but Elixir and Copilot, man, sometimes it's just like you can write a whole module just going tab, enter, tab, enter, tab, enter. If it's just like some repetitive functions that assign things. And I think that's cool. I think that's all down to the the simplicity of it. There's not a billion ways to do something. There's a few ways to do a thing. And then lastly, I think a lot of the tools, especially Phoenix as a whole, but also a bunch of other packages, I think they encourage best practices in design, like architecture, more than other languages I've used. Especially separating your data model from your database, or rather your business logic from your database, and the idea of contexts within your directory structure. It fits a lot more into like the DDD world, where you model everything as a business domain and not as like not just having a controllers folder where who knows what might be in there, all your business logic. So yeah. Then obviously the beam. What I think that allows us day to day to do is actually own our infrastructure as developers. At Zappi, we've got an incredible SRE team. Like they really, really are the best of us. And everything, all the Rails apps, everything's running on Kubernetes and Docker images. It's fantastic. That's why all of our systems are fault tolerant and concurrent, for lack of a better word, scalable. But what I've come to realize is that Ruby, or rather Rails, isn't scalable. Your hardware is scalable. So you can call any language scalable if you throw thousands of machines at it, and that's what Shopify does. They order lots and lots of new machines every February from Google in preparation for Black Friday. They have like a standing deal with them to just order more. And with Elixir, you don't need that. Your language does a lot of the work for you. And sure, at those massive scales, you do still need to boost your hardware. But if you're talking, I don't know, like 10,000 connections, you could probably do that on a Mac. I haven't benchmarked anything, but I'd expect a good Mac to be able to do 10,000 concurrent connections easily, right? So yeah, that means, one, it's just cost. If you're talking about a startup and you don't want to spend hundreds of thousands on AWS bills, then Elixir is just a better option if you want to save money. But then I also find that development speed increases, specifically development speed of big problems, complex problems, where previously you would have to get infrastructure involved. With Elixir, we just kind of don't. You can just do stuff in the app. And an example we had in particular was a few years ago. I helped myself and two other very senior developers helped build our asynchronous message communication gem. And it's just a SQS SNS thing. So it publishes to SNS and then polls an SQS queue, and it does this for each app. But that involved weeks of work with 3 very senior devs, and then you have all the infrastructure things. You have to set up a like little pod that sits alongside each application just to poll the queue. So there's just so much overhead in terms of running your application. Whereas in Elixir, I gave it to one of my team members, and he did it alone in a week, less than a week, got it up and running. And that kind of freedom to actually own your infrastructure and build complex things quickly is, again, something I haven't experienced before. And it makes you feel like you can really do cool stuff and not feel blocked by external complexities or external people. And then maybe the biggest thing I've come to realize is the ecosystem. Ruby is, sure, it's got a more advanced ecosystem in some ways, but in Elixir, you can always use Erlang modules directly. But more importantly, I think, because Elixir is built on top of the Beam, it's built on top of Erlang, and Erlang has been around since, I don't remember, what's it, like the 60s, 70s?
Well, 80s, but
80s.
88.
88, okay. Well, still a long time, and they've solved a lot of the hard technical problems. The concurrency and all of that jazz, those are all solved. You see Python and Ruby these days people are building libraries to make immutable data objects. People are really trying to force a concurrency model on top of something that wasn't built with a concurrency model in mind. And I think some of them are getting there, but it seems like an uphill battle. So what I think Elixir living on top of that great model allows people to do these days is focus on innovation when it comes to the ecosystem. Not porting over something from a language into Elixir, but rather building Flame, which I don't think there's nothing like it out there. Building Livebook, building Live-View, really, and also jumping onto the AI bandwagon and the numerical Elixir, and really trying to push the boundaries of what a language can do, rather than playing catch up with everything else, saying, okay, we've got this stuff. You also see a lot less libraries these days which are just wrappers around old Erlang modules, because I think people have become fine with just using Erlang directly, saying, hey, that stuff exists in Erlang, let's use it, focus our efforts on making new stuff. And that, I don't know, it's inspiring to me to see real innovation in the framework space and the language space, and just cool shit coming out constantly. It's a cool time to be a part of this movement.
Cool.
Yeah. And then like the tooling and just the dev experience focus, there was a talk by Wojciech at this conference I went to recently, and
yeah, was it Beam, the EU Beam conference or something?
Yeah,
Codebeam Europe.
Codebeam, that's the name.
Yep.
So he's like one of the biggest maintainers of Mix, and hearing him talk so passionately about just making a good experience for developers. I mean, their goal is to have Mix's goal is to have zero dependency Elixir installs, where they have every possible combination of like Erlang, OTP, Elixir distribution, plus all of the Linux distributions and Mac and Windows. They want to have pre-built versions of every single one of those cached somewhere, so that all you have to do is download that binary, and there you go. You have Elixir. You don't have to install or build anything locally. And that kind of mindset is just, it's where you want to be. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, what I've been finding is that Elixir just makes the difficult stuff easy. There's like all these languages can do things, but Elixir does do them very easily, and it's helped us get to where my team and I are today. We've built like an incredible data analytics platform hooked into AI. People have been super excited about it. Our data platform is coming along, the one that the other team is building, and we are slowly getting to a point where we're going to hook the two together. So we've been running our like data crunching off of the old system, hooking into it with an API. We're almost at the point where the new database is mature enough that we can hook into them. And on both teams, I don't think anyone has wished at all to go back to Ruby. Everyone is just, everyone who makes a change is stoked with it. So yeah, like I said, might have been preaching to the choir, but if you can take something away there, then I hope you enjoyed it.
Cool, thanks a lot. No, that definitely gives me some more context that I wasn't aware of. I want to open it up for questions from the rest of you guys. I just want to mention that, I mean, what you're describing is a rebuild. It's not just a project inside a new project that's kind of greenfield. It's rebuild of an existing Ruby code base. And some people do that, but like rebuilds are really, really difficult to get right.
The important thing is we are not trying to match any functionality. We are trying to
So new set of functionality.
Exactly.
Because we've got new capabilities, new requirements.
I think the front end is connected in such a way that it looks like it's a seamless experience between the old stuff and the new stuff. And we're going to try, so everything that we focus on at first has been new features that we didn't have before. And then we're going to iteratively replace the old with the new. So, I wouldn't recommend rebuilding something exactly the same, just in a different language. But if your entire business requirement and business model is different, then
no, but it's fantastic that you've been able to pull it off, and it seems like it's a success and it's going well. So anybody's got any questions or comments for Dylan?
Yeah, I've got a question. I think one of the things that I've just been, looking at is the fact that building like a multi-tenancy application, such as like a marketplace, could be something that is a bit daunting, especially when it comes to auth. I know that there are a few things like, building plugs on top of plugs, but I mean, there isn't like a fully fledged tutorial or solution that is just live view. And I think, I don't know how you guys are approaching that. I'm not even sure that you guys have a multi-tenancy kind of architecture, especially with the users, but how are you guys approaching that?
It's not quite multi-tenancy, but we do have, so what we've got at the moment is actually quite complex, and I am pushing to try and open source some of what we've done around authentication. We have two ways to authenticate users. The one is using one login, like an XML-based authentication system, which we use for our admin backend. which is all the live view stuff. But then our main application, front end application, is a big React front end with micro front ends, all that jazz. That uses JWT. So we do have a custom dual authentication thing, which took some work to figure out. Like you said, there's nothing great out there, but I have been thinking about either writing something up or trying to open source bits of it. But yeah, it's currently a little bit bespoke because of where we store the authentication, like the cookies, the keys that they're stored under.
It's complicated very quickly.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to auth.
But there's definitely some learnings there which I could share with a blog post.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Anyone else?
So I have a question. It sounds like going from Ruby to Elixir, you've probably had a lot of people around you learning Elixir rapidly for the first time, trying to get stuff done. And I'm wondering what sort of what resources you've found that have been particularly effective for people learning.
I personally recommend Elixir in Action to everyone by Sasha. That was the biggest one to me. And then I spent some time trying to read a bit into like patterns in functional programming. Honestly, I think I agree with, I think it was Jose who said like a lot of patterns are just there to get around object-oriented nonsense. But there's a few like the token pattern, and then the other thing which I could really recommend, don't know if anyone's seen it, but in the official Elixir docs, they've got like a whole section on anti-patterns.
Oh yes, yeah, it's fantastic.
And just reading through all of that, I found it only 6 months, into our first project, and went back and was like, oh god, okay, I can see exactly why things are the way they are. So yeah. I would also say,
official Elixir docs in general are really good.
Yeah.
Went off to other stuff and kept coming back to the official docs. And actually, this is great.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, official Elixir docs and Elixir in Action.
Awesome, thanks.
Well, cool. Then thanks a lot for sharing, Dylan. I think in the interest of time, we'll give the floor to Stephan. So Stephan is at Flickswitch. And for those of you who don't know them, they're a company based in Cape Town who manage data SIM cards for you. So you go to them and you order a bunch of SIM cards in bulk, and they'll help you make sure the data, the SIM cards have data loaded on them, and you can manage that and keep track of it and see reports on individual SIM cards, no matter where they are. So it's very useful if you're building IoT things, like payment terminals or trackers on, I don't know, on trucks or whatever it may be, things out in the field, and you've got lots of them and they need connectivity, then they help you manage that. I hope that's correct, Stephan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. You can actually, almost probably the better one to ask here, because she is allowed to work with the clients. I am only allowed to work with the computers.
Who is this?
Alma just joined us. She's also from Flickswitch.
Okay, welcome.
On the books you guys just mentioned, I think another good recommendation, and the thing that actually hooked me on Elixir, was Erlang the movie.
Yes, on YouTube.
I was a very, very junior JavaScript developer. I actually briefly owned the website. You might not need braces, specifically for JavaScript. Dylan, by the way. Yeah, so that's that short little 10-minute YouTube clip sold the language Erlang to me, especially the part where Joe Armstrong goes, Beatrice, is it okay if I just slide into my presentation?
Yeah, of course.
Cool. What really sold me was when Joe went, look, here's a program in C, and he just starts scrolling, and then he goes, and here's the example in Erlang, and it's 4 lines. That's the part. That's when I knew I'm going to be an Erlang developer. Obviously, the problem
Cool.
with Erlang is if you look at it for 5 minutes, you go, ooh, the syntax. And then you find Elixir and everything is good. Let me share my screen here. Right.
Whereabouts are you joining from, Stephan?
I am actually in Cape Town now. I made it.
Okay. Welcome.
Can't share your screen. You must grant permissions in order to share your screen, Safari. Okay, Safari is getting my way. Let's deal with that.
Do you wanna reconnect quickly from a different browser?
No, it's fine. Let me try again. So the problem is that doesn't carry through to real life. I've worked at a couple of more companies, and most of the time, if you join and you open an Elixir project and you open a file, and it's a 400, 500, 600 line module, and you go, ooh, that's not supposed to be like that. Anyway, so
words as well.
Yeah, so I think I found a solution, and it is a language. It comes with a language. And it's telemetry. I think most of us, if we think of telemetry, we think it's metrics. It's the thing that goes to Prometheus or Grafana, and that's all it's good for. But it turns out it's actually much more useful than that. So in theory,
cool.
If you're a junior developer or whatever, you get a Greenfields project and you start writing a module, and this is the module you end up with, and everything is cool and everything is great, and you hand it in and everything works like it should. And then your boss asks you to add logging, or you need to add metrics, or you need to add Slack alerts, or maybe you go away you go on holiday and you come back and your colleagues have gotten to your module and now it looks like that, right? That's not ideal because it is not. I mean, it's pretty easy to refactor code like this, but it should not be like this. You shouldn't. You should be able to look at a module and know what it does instantly. That was what we were sold as users of the language. So it turns out you can refactor a code like this, or you can write it greenfields, and all you need to add is telemetry events. You add one line to each function. You do telemetry execute. You give it a what's this called? Event. You give it some measurements, and you give it some metadata, and it does absolutely nothing. That line just sits there. If you just leave it like that, it doesn't do anything. It just carries on. But what you do then is you write handler modules. So if I wanted logging, I can write a logging module, and I hook into the same events, and I do my logging.
Just for context here, what we were looking at is a GenServer, right? So you're looking at callbacks in the GenServer, and then the big complicated one is if you try and push more and more logic into those callbacks, because we've all got application logic and it needs to go somewhere, and it's quite easy to just add a bit of that. Maybe it's a database, right? Maybe it's some computation or whatever it is.
It can be anything.
And that's what kind of
Slack alerts,
gets things quite messy after a while. Okay,
it does get very messy, right? And maybe you don't deal with it on the C-suite level, but definitely if you have junior developers on this, they'll open a file like that and look at it for 2 minutes and then go and make coffee, because you can't fit all of that in your head. It's just not going to happen. Right.
Okay, so you're proposing take out a lot of that stuff, a lot of that clutter, and what you put in its place is a telemetry execute call each time in each callback. Okay.
You can use a telemetry execute. There is also telemetry span, which is useful if you want to measure the duration that a function body runs in. But just to keep it simple, I'm just using execute.
Cool.
Right, and that's all you need. And it doesn't do anything, like I said. If you test this module as is, it will just work like it did before. You can then separately afterwards, or even beforehand, it turns out, go and write your handler modules. And you keep them simple. You can have one for logging, you can have one for metrics. And in fact, if you look at this example, it's just throwing, it shouldn't do that. It can just execute another event. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. If you needed to modify the measurements or the metadata here. You can have one for persistence even, which I found surprising. But yeah, it works. You can have one for PubSub, you can have one for Slack. The point is, if you just look at this module, you can tell what it's doing. If you go to the original module and you just look at it, you can tell what it's doing. It takes a message, it decides what reply to send. Very simple. And this would be how you attach it. You bring the two together. So you bring your events together and the functions that should be called by calling telemetry attach. Usually you would do this in, if you want to get technical, you do this in your applications file. I haven't found a better way to do this yet. The problem with using telemetry events is if any of these functions that you call crashes, handler gets detached. So it fires once and then it crashes and then it doesn't fire again. But it turns out you can fix that with telemetry as well. If one of your handlers crashes, it emits an event, and you take that event and you just reattach your handler. So what's interesting here is if you read the manual, it tells you not to do this. You don't always need to follow the manual. You just need to, if you do this, if you do what I tell you, not what the manual tells you, just check your error logs. Yes, and that's it. I've used this in a small production example, this way of coding. I've actually coded the specific example I can't mention in both ways, one using telemetry and one without. And the one with telemetry it's so much easier to refactor. And I think that's the big thing. You can, both ways were equally fast to sit and write, but coming back to them even after a week without telemetry events, it's just a nightmare. With telemetry events, because all of the concerns are separated. And I think one way to try and use this, if you're not a solo developer, is to define your events beforehand, and then have your front-end developers develop off the events instead of the back-end code. And you can have your back-end developers work on the code that will eventually emit those events. But the magic is they can both work at the same time. There's no more waterfall. And that's the theory. That is my talk. Questions?
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Go for it.
Oh, cool. Just on that last point, like how would you define that list? Just so that it becomes like an interface between your backend and your front end. How would you define that list of events, and how would you share it?
That's a good question, because you can't. There is a suggestion to go write a module that does this, but I don't think that's the best way to go. I think the way to go about that is you write a markdown document, and you can even, because you kind of know what your system is supposed to do. If you know what your system is supposed to do, you define your 5 or 6 events that you're expecting. But it's fine if you need to add events afterwards. It doesn't. If you have a handler that's connected to an event that doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't crash your code still compiles. And it's same on the other end. If you have a code that emits events and there's nothing listening to that, it doesn't crash your code. So both teams can develop without the code of the other side. If you refer to a markdown document.
Okay.
Yes,
Cool.
Dylan.
Yeah, this was a very interesting way of thinking about things. We actually, you solved a bug for me that we've been struggling with a lot. The whole fact that it unattaches when it encounters an error. So thanks for that. But what I'm curious about, I think all your examples here, you seem to be using it for kind of side effecty things. So, Slack notification. Would you use this to drive actual like business logic, or would you keep it more for the side effect stuff?
Business logic is going to be tricky. I wouldn't web together business logic with this unless you stick to message passing, I guess. Unless you have very well-defined messages that you that can, let's say, for instance, you have a external RabbitMQ system. Maybe you'll have a handler that goes to Rabbit, but maybe for local dev, you'll have another handler that does exactly the same thing that Rabbit would have done. But instead of sending it to Rabbit, it just emits the event that receives that message.
Right.
The telemetry effect, telemetry doesn't do anything. It just, because if you go read the source, the telemetry functions still get run in the context of the caller. In other words, if you have a very short function and you have very slow handlers, that function becomes slow.
Okay.
So, yeah, business logic, maybe not business logic. I think the beauty of this is you move your side effects. Just get your side effects out of the module, and you keep your business logic pure in your GenServer.
Cool. That makes sense.
So are you saying that telemetry doesn't replace Smalltalk?
I am either too young or too old to know what Smalltalk is.
Smalltalk is the object-oriented language before all the class-based languages was created, but it's actual message sending.
Right.
Back when O was actually quite nice.
Was that ever a thing?
Yeah, Smalltalk is great. If you ever have time, it's a wonderful language. Yeah.
So here you are, you're emitting telemetry events, and then you're attaching handlers to listen for them. Could you have done the same thing just using PubSub? Or, well, using PubSub, I guess it's not necessarily easier or so, but have you considered that?
Yes and no. What I do in a case like this, I think I might have used PubSub as an example. Yes.
Okay.
So I would use telemetry, and then from the telemetry, I'd emit the PubSub events. I've seen an example in the wild where PubSub was used for this, and it is really not nice to work with.
Does this get very hairy?
It gets hairy, and it isn't. It forces you to be async. It forces the code to be asynchronous. You can't do synchronous code in PubSub.
Okay, so you still want these things to happen sequentially in the calling process.
It gives you the option. So it gives you it is sequential by default, but because it's Erlang, you can just hit spawn and it becomes async.
Yeah.
But if you use PubSub, you don't have that option. PubSub is going to be different processes.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Any other questions for Stephan? Stephan, are you gonna? We have a question from Nduati.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of following up on Dylan's question. So if, let's say, your side effect is to write to the database, if that database write fails, does the error go back up all the way to the GenServer, or does it just fail inside
what happens?
Right, that's a good question. In this case, just the handler fails. The handler gets run in a try-catch block, and if it fails, it detaches the handler, but your function it just runs the next handler after that. So that it might be a good thing or it might be a bad thing. If you do want your whole function to crash when the database write fails, don't use telemetry. But if you want your logging to still work and you want your GenServer to keep running, telemetry is good for this. But it does do the whole try catch. It does catch, it does rescue, and it does what's the other one? It does all of them for you.
Am I right if I say that this kind of approach is great if you want for running side effects that are kind of best effort, where you want it to try, and if it breaks, a particular one breaks, but all the rest still keep going?
Yes, if you happen to use the reattach trick, yes, then I'd assume that's the case. If it's more the case of a system that goes down often for minutes or hours at a time, like external system, then I'd use telemetry events and have the thing detach, and it's fine. Maybe try and reattach every 10 minutes or so. But it's just more flexible.
Cool. Wilhelm, do you have any more thoughts on this pattern?
No, no. I mean, it's. I tried working with telemetry more on a like a logic flow as well. It's like trying to separate it. But the thing is, my paranoia with detaching is quite high, especially because we work with financial systems.
Yeah.
So anything async, anything that's actual business logic. We don't use telemetry, but for all metrics and monitoring and logging, yeah, telemetry it's wonderful. And for all the sync stuff, we use the urban package.
Yeah, no, agreed. I wouldn't do accounting with telemetry. You're gonna get burned. What I mean, if you're doing accounting, what's the thing that came out recently in Zig? Oh no, what's it called?
Is it Tiger Beetle DB?
Yeah, Tiger
Beetle
Beetle.
DB.
That's it. Yeah, I'd try using Tiger Beetle for accounting.
What's Tiger Beetle?
It's like a database.
Link, yeah.
It's actually not a database. It's like a T account in accounting, and that's all it does. But it does it really fast. I think it probably does it 10 times faster than you would be able to do it in Elixir.
Okay. Yeah, the reality of transactions is even a very busy service. Like we process transactions for 3 banks at the moment. It's not that many. Like there's not that many transactions. So we have a double entry account system running on Postgres, and we can do quite a few transactions per second without. I think we're on the lowest tier of the Postgres database still in production. It doesn't really flinch. But I think with the first dog was interesting because it's been 4 years in with our startup, and we're still running on the lowest end Fargate AWS instances with 125 megabyte of RAM, and we process we've got a lot of traffic. Yeah, and like every like couple of months we do an audit on resources, whatever, and Erlang doesn't really mind a lot of traffic. It's just as long as your code is semi-efficient. But with Rails, we had to spend dedicated time making sure that stuff can perform.
Our biggest well, we were both excited and saddened when we realized we could quite easily hit like database connection pool limits. Elixir accidentally spawned like 6,000 generation processes and just slammed the database.
That was the first performance issue we had. Is we spun up another web server, and we ran into a connection pool issue. That was literally the only thing.
But then you just upped the size of the connection pool, or what did you do?
That's exactly what we did.
Yeah, I think our problem was, our problem was. Oh no, you go, Stephen.
Right. So there is a trick in Postgres that I think everyone should know, because
yes,
if you do single database writes in Postgres, you are never going to go above 1,000 or maybe 2,000 transactions a second, you can just forget about it. I have a theory, and it will be tested soon, that going fewer connections and just going fat connections is the trick. Just do batch updates. Batch updates gets you from
we do a lot of
maybe
batch
1,000
updates,
to at least 100,000 on your laptop easily.
Yeah, so most of our processing is collecting batches and then doing batch updates. That's why it's like, it's relatively efficient how we can process the amount of transactions we do.
Cool.
Right. The other trick with that is don't mix your single write and your batch write pools. I have two separate pools because they do step on each other.
No. Luckily, we don't have to worry about it yet. There's a lot of, that's the funny thing, there's a lot of room for being non-optimal. And Elixir, in a way, it makes you lazy, because the time when, like, I think, there was a time when I saw there was some, like, there was a little bit of spiking going on, and then we, as a team, we forgot how to optimize. So Elixir makes you a little bit lazy in that regard.
Cool. Any other comments or questions before we wrap up? No, then I just want to thank Stephan and Dylan for sharing. I really appreciate it. So yes, and then just in terms of what to expect from these meetups, I used to have them about every 8 weeks, but the previous one was a bit longer than that. It's because I was moving house and going through all sorts of stuff. But so we should be back to a normal kind of eight week cadence on these. But me and Dylan have also been speaking about maybe making the next one in person, and it'll be probably around February sometime, and that would be Cape Town. So sorry if that excludes people who can't make it all the way here. But after that, the next would be another kind of remote meetup similar to what you had here. So yeah, please, just keep that in mind, and we'll share a bit more details when it's available. Or what do you think, Dylan?
Good.
Yeah.
So Dylan, if you need to.
No. You, I think you said everything. I have been chatting to people at work, and I think mid-ish Feb is looking like ideal. I think once we got more information, then we'll share it.
Yeah, and we're looking at a format where it'll hopefully be a few talks in one afternoon, so not just a single talk meetup like we're doing at the moment. But yeah, we'll share a bit more hopefully soon. Stephan, anything from you?
Yeah. So I want to make a recommendation. Maybe we definitely need more people for this, but I think we should try and do a hackathon. I think if we do, I don't know about you guys, but we do struggle to get Elixir devs. I think if we as a community want to onboard more junior devs, that's a thing that's sorely needed.
Cool.
Focused on Elixir. But that would need to be in person, eh?
Yeah, definitely. Cover it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Stephan, maybe you can get our marketing team to sponsor like a big data bundle or something as a prize.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Or 1,000 SIM cards.
Yeah, but what are you going to do with 1,000 SIM cards if you don't have any data for it? Think like a coder. Don't think like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Alma.
We can chat to her at the year-end function on Saturday.
Right.
Yeah, give someone a terabyte of data, and that's going to get the young coding guys keen to hack as well.
Cool.
Or Raspberry Pis or something, because now, with nerves or something. That's always exciting.
Well, those are good ideas,
company, the betting company that used to use Elixir in South Africa, and then they moved over to .NET.
Betting company?
Yeah, I think it's Hollywood.
I'm not sure.
Anyways, because I can't remember the exact name, but it's like as they grew the team, they couldn't hire Elixir devs, and then switch over to .NET. because it's just
Okay.
easier to buy.
Bed software. Okay.
I don't know.
Were they looking specifically for Elixir devs, or were they just looking
No,
for?
I saw
Yeah,
some
they-
CV. I saw some CVs
Going
where
higher.
people
And
have
they-
Elixir and it was on the legacy systems, and then the current language was .NET. So deduced it.
Okay. Cool.
So well, but what I'm saying is this, yeah, I think it's reality is like the chicken egg problem with Elixir. So maybe getting some people in a room to show them some cool stuff. But nerves and the LM stuff is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I just got excited there for a second.
I love nerves. Yeah. Cool. Okay. But then that all sounds good. I think thanks a lot for that input. So me and Dylan and Vusi are going to chat about that, and then we'll share a bit more detail, and we'll try and get some sponsorship and stuff hopefully, and see if we can get an appealing lineup of talks for sometime in February.
I think
Cool.
I'm telling my partner that it's a Valentine's trip to Cape Town.
It's good timing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect destination.
We'd love to see you, Vusi. Cool. So thanks for joining, everyone, and hopefully see you around next time.
Yeah, thanks for organizing.
Cheers. Thanks, Petrus.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Great. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.